Hello everyone, this is my presentation. In this presentation, I'll be talking about the different functions and structures of the plasma membrane. Hope you all enjoy. The plasma membrane is the boundary between the cell and its environment. It regulates what enters and exits the cell. This division of labor allows cells to operate more efficiently and respond to changing environmental conditions. Cells must maintain an appropriate amount of molecules to function. They must also have a way to keep things out or to allow things to enter. This is the job of the plasma membrane. It basically acts like a guard at a gated community. The guard must inspect those who enter and those who leave to make sure that only the people and the things needed in the community are there. The plasma membrane is composed of phospholipid bilayer, which is two layers of phospholipids back to back. Phospholipids are lipids with phosphate group attached to them. The phospholipids have one head and two tails, and is an amphipathic molecule, which means that one side, which is the head, is polar, and it's hydrophilic, which means that it is water-loving. And the other side, which are the tails, are nonpolar and is hydrophobic, which means that it's water-fearing. Since water is a key component of living organisms, both inside and out of the cell, this causes the phospholipids to line up into two layers with the heads pointing outward and the tails hidden in the middle. This basically looks like a phospholipid sandwich, with the heads forming the bread and the tails forming the meat in the middle. Cholesterol is another lipid found in the plasma membrane. They help modify the fluidity of the membrane over a range of temperature. They are located throughout the surface of the plasma membrane, and they help stabilize the phospholipids and keep them in position. This is the fluid mosaic model. This is one of the models used to describe the plasma membrane. This model describes the plasma membrane of an animal cell, and it's basically the tapestry of several types of molecules, including phospholipids, cholesterols, and proteins that are constantly moving. This movement helps the cell membrane maintain its role as a barrier between the inside and outside of cell environments. Phospholipids and proteins that have attached to carbohydrate chains are known as glycoproteins and glycolipids. Since the carbohydrate chains occur only on the outer surface and the peripheral proteins occur on the other side, the two sides of the membrane are not identical, which becomes asymmetrical. In animal cells, the carbohydrate chains attached to proteins give the cell glycolax, which protects the cell and various other functions such as cell-to-cell adhesion, reception of signaling molecules, and cell-to-cell recognition. The carbohydrate chains on a cell's exterior can be highly diverse. They can vary in the number and sequence of sugars. There are also various types of proteins presented in the plasma membrane. The channel protein is one of them. The channel proteins are involved in passing molecules through the membrane. They form a channel that allows the substance to simply move from one side to the other. For example, A channel protein allows hydrogen ions to flow across the inner mitochondrial membrane. Without this movement of hydrogen ions, ATP will never be produced. In a carrier protein, they act similar to channel proteins, but they receive a substance and change their shape. This change serves to move the substance across the membrane. A carrier protein transports sodium potassium ions across the plasma membrane of a nerve cell. Without this reaction, the nerve impulse conduction would be impossible. In cell recognition proteins, they are known as glycoproteins. Among other functions, these proteins help the body recognize when it's being invaded by pathogens, so that an immune response can occur. Without this recognition, pathogens would be able to freely invade the body and hinder its function. In receptor proteins have a shape that allows only a specific molecule to bind to it. The binding of this molecule causes the protein to change its shape and thereby bringing a cellular response. This coordination of the body organ is totally dependent on such signaling molecules. For example, the liver stores glucose after it's signaled to do so by insulin. In the enzymatic protein, they carry out metabolic reactions. Without these proteins, the cell will never be able to perform the chemical reactions needed to maintain its metabolism. Last but not least, the junction protein. Proteins are involved in forming various types of junctions between animal cells. Signaling molecules that passes through gap junctions allow the cilia of cells that line your respiratory tract to beat in unison. This is basically the summary of all the different proteins in the plasma membrane. In the permeability of the cell membrane. The plasma membrane is selectively permeable, which means it allows some substances to move across the membrane and inhibits passages of other molecules. Certain molecules are able to freely cross the membrane without any energy, such as the non-charged molecules, which are CO2, O2, glycerol, alcohol, and they're able to freely cross the membrane by passing through the phosphate bilayer. These molecules follow their concentration gradient, which means moving from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. In the figure below, it illustrates which types of molecules can passively cross a membrane with no energy required, and which may require transport by a carrier protein and an expenditure of energy. Specialized proteins termed aquaporins speed up water transport across the membrane. The movement of ions and polar molecules across the membrane is often assisted by carrier protons. Some molecules must move against their concentration gradient with expenditure of energy, known as active transport. Large particles enter or exit the cell via bulk transport, such as exocytosis and endocytosis. That's about it for this section. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you.